So we're going to begin by acknowledging with honor and respect the indigenous nations on whose territories the university now stands and whose historical relationship with the land continues to this day. We'd also like to acknowledge the elders, past and present, including MSU's current Council of Elders, and humbly ask for their guidance. The Valley of the Flowers, which is Gallatin Valley, has been and remains a place of learning for Native American peoples, who for millennia have passed ways of knowing, being, and doing from one generation to the next. While land acknowledgement is not enough, it is an important social justice and decolonialization practice that promotes indigenous visibility and a reminder that we are on settled indigenous land. And this evening, Professor Donovan is going to be speaking. He's been teaching graduate and undergraduate students since 2004, and has served as a faculty fellow for the Honors College at MSU since 2011. He holds a doctorate in psychology from Pacifica Graduate Institute. He's particularly interested in the existential questions regarding living a meaningful life in the face of human awareness of ineffable finitude. This quest has been inspired by Ernest Becker's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Denial of Death, and the ongoing social psychological research project, Terror Management Theory, TMT. He's the author of The Rail, Was Really Doin in the 60s Bronx, a coming-of-age story in his formative years in New York City, and he currently lives in Bozeman, MT. And so, yeah, thank you, Prof. D, for kicking off this semester.
Thanks, Eric. I've never spoken on one leg before. So this could get a little clunky, so I will apologize in advance. You looking at your watch already? It's okay, I understand that honors presents is both your interest combined with a compelling need to get 3 of these under your belt somehow. All right, well, I'll do my best to keep you entertained. Narrow your educational horizons actually is my goal, and we'll see what we can do. I'm going to talk a little bit about the hero's journey. I'm going to try to read my presentation on one leg. I'm interested in this for 2 reasons. One, because I've studied archetypal psychology, and Joseph Campbell in the Hero's Journey is all part of that. You've probably heard that or read something about it. Feels like I go on a hero's journey about once every decade, so it's a compelling metaphor for me as I navigated my life. At the same time, given the state of the planet, I'm not sure it serves us in the face of all the crises that we face. So this is what I'm wrestling with. For the last 2 years, I've been wrestling with the new idea of a hero for the 21st century, a metaphor that we could use to possibly make change, contribute to our communities, be global citizens. So this is what I'm going to play around with in this talk. I think, I didn't time it this time, I think it's down to 15 or 16 minutes. And then we'll have some time for commentary, Q&A, cross-amphitheater dialogues, however you guys want to do that. Does that work for y'all? All right, let's see if I can actually read this. People can hear more or less? Muzzle top. Mythologist Joseph Campbell, in his seminal work, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, documents with stories, images, and artifacts that the heroine's journey is true the world over. So much so that this cross-cultural rite of passage has taken on archetypal dimensions in a variety of forms. It has become a foundation part of human psychological and emotional coming of age. When I was growing up, the hero archetype, viewed through a distinctly American lens, was pretty clear-cut. One-dimensional image. First off, the hero was always a male. He was a soldier, played by John Wayne. Or he was a cavalry officer, played by John Wayne. Or he was a cowboy, played by who?
John.
I'm telling you. What a time to grow up. You get my drift. Did I also say he was always a he? He embodied the mythological American cultural ideals of purity and justice, of always doing his best, cloaked in innocence bordering on naivete, no matter what harm followed in his wake. He also lived in a world where good and evil were easily defined, as you recall, indicated typically by white hats and black hats. This was a world where good inevitably overcame evil, and to all a good night. Back in the day, there were rarely any other kinds of heroes. Sometimes individual first responders were hailed as heroic. Rarely were their doctors or teachers elevated to heroine status, and certainly no one's parents were portrayed as heroes. Sometimes heroes had superpowers, sometimes they just had conviction and integrity. Over time, the hero archetype, in tune with changing reality, becomes less one-dimensional and more varied, more multicultural and multidimensional. Here are a few examples. The willing hero, like James Bond, Nancy Drew. The unwilling hero, like Frodo. The tragic hero, Oedipus, Antigone. The classical hero, King Arthur, Wonder Woman. The epic hero, Beowulf, Odysseus, and in a very timely twist of fate, Mulan. And the anti-hero, Tony Soprano, Lisbeth Salander. So the hero image has become more complex over the centuries. And perhaps the most profound shift in this archetype of the hero is the fact that more and more women are being called to this grand heroine's adventure. More and more women, by sheer force of their changing roles in society, have responded to the call of self-discovery, the call to serve the community in a multiplicity of ways, and are crafting their journey on their own terms. It is past time that the invitation to women to fully partake in the heroine's journey is declared non-negotiable. For it is quite clear that women in every society on the planet are still prevented, often by force of arms and by limiting dead weight of tradition, from undertaking the heroine's journey. Thankfully, more and more contemporary women the world over are embarking on this incredible process of discovery, adding the powerful image of the heroine to this fundamental human journey, and quite frankly, fomenting a paradigm shift. So what is this hero's journey anyway? How does one begin? What are the contours of the terrain that must be traversed? What guides and protects us? What are the goals? What are the promises and the pitfalls? Let us turn briefly once again to cross-cultural mythologist Joseph Campbell for a little bit of insight. In concentrated form, all heroes' journeys consist of the following phases: the call, leaving the familiar, the initiation, and then the return. Curiously, and contrary to the way most of us conduct our modern lives, the hero's journey is not really a willful act. According to Campbell, across hundreds of cultures around the world, the first step is that one must be called to this threshold. As you freshmen here know intimately, each of you is right now answering a call by coming to MSU. The call is fundamentally an inner desire to discover the meaning of your life and what your place is in the great scheme of things. To discover who you are and how your distinct gifts and talents might contribute to a better world. Now, once across this threshold, we enter into unknown territory, marked by only this signpost: you are now leaving the familiar. For as French novelist André Gide noted, quote, "One does not discover new lands without consenting to lose sight of the shore for a very long time," close quote. It is here, in the embrace of the unfamiliar, that the initiation really begins. All throughout the journey, the heroine encounters a series of obstacles and allies, the sudden arrival of angels and demons, each of which must be correctly discerned for what they truly are in order that they be met directly, navigated successfully. Because at first blush on this journey, not all allies turn out to be allies, and not all obstacles are really obstacles. It is here that we must turn to our old friend, critical thinking, to discern appearance from essence, and quite often it involves trial and error, successes and pitfalls. But it is here, in each of these encounters, that strength of character is forged. Remember, the definition of character means to be etched with fine lines. Every angel and demon, every ally and obstacle that we meet with grace and grit, meet with our very own developing style, with our own unique sass, holds the gift of helping us fashion our ethical engagement with other humans, with our planet, and with the wider cosmos. It is as if each of these encounters is a strike from Michelangelo's masterful chisel upon the marble of our lives. Akin to his famous sculpture, Awakening Slave, each blow of the chisel frees us more and more to engage fully with our lives and frees us into our obligations. Yes, let me repeat that line. The creation of our character frees us into our obligations by revealing them to us. Or as Joseph Campbell explained, it's not the agony of the quest, it's the rapture of the revelation. The forging and revelation of our true character signals our maturity and our readiness to serve the world. Finally, we come to the part of the journey where the hero returns to the world previously left. Once again, the hero stands at another threshold where community prepares a welcome. Here, because of the initiatory transformation that the heroine has undergone, the once familiar landscape previously called home is glimpsed through new eyes and seen as if for the very first time. A process you will discover when you go home for Thanksgiving. Because the truth is that the hero's journey is never an individual undertaking, never simply an individual calling. While it must be enacted by each individual, it is prompted by the myths and meaning systems of the overall culture. And the heroine is tasked with the obligation to serve that culture or community upon return. In fact, this initiation can only be rendered by the community recognizing and embracing the hero as a new person they have become, painstakingly etched into their full character, eager to share all they have discovered, emboldened by the desires to be responsible to something greater than themselves. So this is the outline of the hero's journey. And this is what stirred Campbell so intensely, so much so that he devoted his entire life to connecting the mythological dots of this undertaking across cultures. But there was a shadow stretching across the modern landscape, one that disturbed and challenged Joseph Campbell. This was his growing contention that in our hyper-materialist and hyper-individualistic culture, the mythologies that once made the heroine's journey so vital, so much a necessity in our being made ready for our place within community and cosmos, he feared these mythologies were withering. I am convinced that Campbell worried mightily as he recognized the growing staleness and limitations of the hero's journey in firing our imaginations under today's conditions. In the face of scientific and technological changes, in the face of mythologies being dismissed, discarded, or failing to live up to new realities, Campbell ached for the emergence of new myths to infuse the hero's journey with a large enough vision to enable us to make sense of our entire world, enable us to live together on this precious planet Earth. For here, is our dilemma. See that? That underscores my point. For here is our dilemma. Let's see if it happens again. Expressed vividly in cultural, economic, and the political polarization wrenching our society and the whole planet, including environmental catastrophe, racial, class, and gender oppression and injustice, seemingly daily police killings of people of color, and now a pandemic. The confusion, anxiety, rage, and grief are all symptoms that our myths are no longer working for the majority of humans. We are buffeted within a dynamic global push-pull. On one side, powerful forces are demanding the inclusion of all beings under a new global myth, while on the other side, powerful forces are demanding the reconstruction and reestablishment of old myths that favored and comforted the powerful few for hundreds of years. In the balance rests the fate of anima mundi, Latin, meaning the soul of the world. But how does the heroine respond without an overarching mythos to serve as guidance? What does the hero do when new mythological shores remain unglimpsed, far beyond the current fading horizon? What will arise as a new orienting North Star when the call of our contemporary moment is heard and must be responded to, which I believe is happening right this second. But prescient as Campbell was, and as deeply as he saw the crying need for a new global myth, he knew that the emergence of a new myth had to be an organic process, not simply thought up or imposed upon reality. What then does all this mean for our contemporary heroes? Who among today's heroines and heroes will answer to call, and in what form? What will the 21st century heroine look like? The first thing it means is that we are being invited to respond to an entirely new call into this mythic journey. It is a call very different from the past, when it was enough for heroes and heroines to be concerned about their own small corner of reality, or concerned about their own group or their own people. Instead, this is an invitation to take up the hero's journey as a global call, in the spirit of living our way into the answers to the deepest questions about living together on this planet. It has become imperative that we commit ourselves to a new conversation with the earth and with each other. It has become urgent that we imagine a myth that celebrates and enhances, nurtures and sustains our mutual coexistence upon and with this planet. But how do we get there from here? Is there another face of the hero-heroine, different from all the ones that have been tried and are now found wanting, that is made precisely for the 21st century? I am inspired and compelled by the lives of two Czechoslovakian freedom fighters, Jan Patafka and Václav Havel. Their example has gotten me to wondering about a new image for the hero and the heroine, given all that is going on in every corner of the world. Both of these men played key roles in the 1968 Prague Spring, a revolt against Soviet domination in Eastern Europe. This was followed by the occupation of their country by 500,000 Soviet troops in a move to normalize the upstart nation. This led to 20 years of clampdown on all manner of activities that the Soviets deemed counter-revolutionary. It also led to 20 years of resistance. This entailed everything from subversive political art and theater, music, disguised anti-occupation political rallies, underground presses and printing, secret meetings, labor strikes, and more. The term dissident was born out of this resistance. While Patafka did not live to see it, Havel became a central figure in the nonviolent Velvet Revolution of 1989 had finally toppled Soviet domination of Czechoslovakia. In the process, Havel became the first democratically elected president. With this in mind, the image of the hero, heroine I'd like to leave you with, that I think, and I'm wrestling with this, might be able to respond to the enormity of the call between us, is this: the dissident hero. What does this mean? First, some examples, many of whom you will recognize. People, I believe, have held the dissident hero energy. Greta Thunberg, South African anti-apartheid resistor Steve Biko, ML King and Malcolm X, Malala Yousafzai, Angela Davis, Buddhist activist Thich Nhat Hanh, and Eliza Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi, the co-founders of Black Lives Matter. All dissidents, one and all. Now allow me to summarize and synthesize Havel's perspective on the role and qualities of the dissident, along with some of my own. And see if any of these things fit right now. The role of the dissident is to warn, to predict problems, to be a modern-day Cassandra who consistently tells us what is going on beyond our own frame of reference. The dissident should constantly disturb, should bear witness to the misery of the world. The dissident should be provocative by being independent. The dissident should be the chief doubter of systems of power and their incantations, and be beyond political parties and ideologies. A dissident doesn't belong anywhere. She stands out as an irritant wherever she is. She is independent, critical thinking, and does not fit into any pigeonhole. A dissident is always at odds with the hard and fast categories because black and white thinking tends to be an instrument in the service of the status quo, the dominant narrative. A dissident is committed to building bridges of dialogue to every corner of the globe, demonstrating a willingness to speak and listen with an open heart, rather than allowing xenophobia to carry the day. A dissident is committed to shifting our narrow, self-involved mindsets to one of co-creating communities of mutual respect and inclusion. A dissident is committed to extending their hearts in empathy. A dissident is committed to defending democracy. Right now, democracy is under siege across the globe, thrashing about as it is being denied oxygen in the dangerous vacuum of political and social polarization. I believe that these are some of the attributes that the dissident hero has access to and must cultivate in building the foundations of new myths and stories that will orient us as global citizens. As I move toward concluding, allow me to share a quote from Václav Havel's 1984 speech, Politics and Conscience. Quote, "Does not the perspective of a better future depend on something like an international community of the shaken, which, ignoring state boundaries, political systems, and power blocks, standing outside the high game of traditional politics, aspiring to no titles or appointments, will seek to make a real political force out of a phenomenon so ridiculed by the technicians of power, the phenomenon of human conscience. Will seek to make a real political force out of the phenomenon of human conscience." Finally, as the Talmud advises, emphasizing the freedom and obligation arising out of our human conscience, let me end with this. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. Who among us will act from our conscience? Who among us will be today's dissident heroines and heroes? Namaste. Thank you.